This is Hidden Killers Year in Review, a look back at the biggest stories of 2025. This is Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski.
Bryan Kohberger. There's, a lot happening since Judge Hippler said, we got to be a little more transparent. And transparent certainly is what we're seeing a lot more of these days. As the developments continue on, it makes you raise your eyebrows, literally, between the Amazon trail, the criminology case essay that reads kind of like a how-to guide, and the mysterious disappearance of his phone at just the right moment. Prosecutors are laying out what they claim is a carefully calculated plan. But how much of this sticks in a courtroom? Sounds good on paper, sounds good on the internet, but how is it going to read to a jury? And how much is just a really bad coincidence, which I'm going to guess that's going to be the next argument. Joining us is defense attorney and former prosecutor Eric Faddis. Eric, when prosecutors say this wasn't just a murder, but a methodical act of forensic evasion, DNA scrubbed, cars cleaned, license plates swapped, and trash ditched at 4 a.m., in little baggies with rubber gloves, because that's normal. How do you begin to kind of push back on this as a defense? Is that a red flag, and can it still be explained away, these sort of things?
Sometimes in a case like this, the defense looks at it and says, hey, my guy couldn't have done this. He's not some mastermind criminal. He's not smart enough to pull this off, that kind of thing. But with Kohberger, he was a PhD student in criminology. And so if there's anybody who knows how to methodically go about trying to commit a crime and then covering it up and get away with it, gosh, a PhD student in criminology would be a pretty good candidate for that. And so that is certainly not a defense that his side is going to be able to put forth.
Especially when you're writing a paper about it and it doesn't look that good. Nobody has, I guess, seen the whole thing. We've seen little excerpts of it, but I'm curious to see what that paper looks like if it comes out, when it comes out. We obviously have seen his questions that were put out on the DeSales website, when he was studying, and those have since been taken down, asking criminals to basically tell me how you were feeling as you were committing said crime. And on the surface, if you're studying criminology, it makes sense. But in the context of, look what he's accused of doing, that gives it a whole other light. Could that just be a coincidence, though? He was studying criminology, even though he seems like he's researching very deeply how to even feel about committing a crime like this.
Yes, some peculiar developments from Kohberger's past that on the surface, some say could, tie him to exactly what these allegations say he did. Now, on the other hand, there is sort of a trend in the law, depends on the jurisdiction, but against using extrinsic types of statements, and especially we look at rap lyrics. A lot of rappers would say, hey, look, I was just saying that because it's part of the song and I'm trying to sell records, whatever. Kohberger could use that principle and say, hey, look, I was simply doing my classwork, and this shouldn't be held against me in a murder case. That would be unfair. And some judges are open to that idea.
Didn't Kohberger, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's so many facets. Didn't he try to make a rap song at one point in time? Wasn't that out? Do you remember? I think this is a thing. I think it was years ago that he attempted that. I got to look into that. But I think early on, when people were looking into this and kind of digging up everything, with the blogging and I think that might have been one of those things. That being interesting, it's all a rap lyric. It's all he got the mask, he got the knife sheath, he shot a music video. Here's the music video, and it just happens to be shot in front of King Road. I'm making that up. The fact that we have more on the Amazon receipts now, he bought the knife, or the exact type of knife with the sheath, with the sharpener, quite a ways back prior to the murders, about 6 months roughly. But now we have receipts that are out there that shows he also bought a mask that happens to look exactly like what one of the surviving roommates saw. Buying those items individually, not a crime by any means, but contextually, is this showing premeditation, considering how far back some of these purchases were to the crime?
That's exactly what the prosecutors are going to look at, because to prove first-degree murder, you have to prove premeditation. You have to prove that he deliberated about this, thought about it one way or the other, and said, no, I'm going to go ahead and stab these 4 people. That also he had malice of forethought. That all means that the prosecution has to prove planning. And when we're talking about allegedly procuring supplies that are going to be necessary to carry out a quadruple stabbing, namely a knife and the sheath, and then those things are found, or the sheath is found at the scene. And then when you add in elements to try to cover your tracks and not be identified, like a mask, all of these things start to have a cumulative effect, which makes it look like the walls are closing in on Kohberger.
Yeah, well, another wall that's closing in is also his, I like to go look at the stars alibi. Now that we've learned there were no stars that night, it was actually very cloudy, very low cloud base as well. So it was foggy on the ground as well. So he's out there looking at the stars. Why didn't Ann Taylor at least go back and check the 7-day forecast just to see what's going on? I mean, it's not hard to look back and find that sort of information before you say, he's looking at the stars. Or was it more of a figurative way of speaking, which I'm sure will be what's argued?
Yeah, certainly. And, but defense, especially in a high profile case, and the prosecution as well, both sides have to realize that representations they make that become public are going to be scrutinized. They're going to be picked apart. People are going to be looking for holes or support or corroboration or lack thereof. And so this seems like a significant oversight and an error, because, that would be an easy thing to kind of shore up and establish. Of course, she could argue it was metaphorical. She could argue that in this specific stretch of the road, there actually wasn't much fog or whatever. But it doesn't look good.
No, it's not a good look. And as we're also learning, more and more surveillance footage is out there, some Ring doorbell cameras, as more things continue to be unsealed. Surveillance footage showing his car in the area right before the murders. Several different, and the argument from the pro-burgers is it's a white car. They had it wrong at the beginning. It was the wrong year of Elantra. It's like, yeah, it's not a great shot, but when you put it in context with multiple camera shots and you go, okay, this pretty much looks like the car, and then he changed his plate shortly thereafter. That's not a good look either, when the vehicle that looks like yours is right there in the crime scene, and then you turn your phone off.
Totally that. And then the changing of plates thing is going to be argued as consciousness of guilt.
Yeah.
Like that's something that criminals do when they're trying to get away with crimes. I'm not aware of any alternative innocent explanation for changing the plates. Maybe there is one. Maybe the defense is looking into that. I don't know. But they should probably look for that, because without some innocent possible explanation, it really makes it look like it's a guy who's trying to get away with murder.
Yeah, it certainly does. And it makes you wonder a little bit too, because they're trying to throw in the autism argument. And again, it's a scale. So you can be, staring at the wall, or you can be insanely productive and a genius, just depending where you're at. And a lot of times you're kind of socially awkward. You do things a little bit different than most. And even, in a highly functional way, it can be coming across as, well, that's a weird way of doing things. Do you think that that's part of the reason why they're trying to throw the autism argument in there? Not to say, well, I mean, they've already had one trying to say that they couldn't, or he couldn't physically have done it because of some other condition. But I actually think it's not a horrible argument of, look, this guy is really awkward. He's autistic. He's always, been a little bit out there, not a murderer, but just, he does things different. And some people could look at it as suspicious or weird. And that's all it is. It's just all these weird coincidences of him, throwing out trash at 4 a.m. and cleaning his car like that, changing the plates, looking really freaked out when the police pull him over twice in a row. I mean, there's a lot of things one could say, well, if anyone in this sort of, mindset or has has autism on the level where he's at, would be acting kind of awkward. Is that where you think they may go, considering the stars don't seem to be a very strong argument at this point?
I think that would be a smart move because, look, as defense, you have these set of circumstances the prosecution is bringing, and they're going to try to show how they're suspicious and unusual and something we wouldn't expect, that kind of thing. And so for defense to look at it, if this gentleman does actually have autism, that would be a potential explanation for peculiarities. For, the jury might think, oh, why would an innocent person do that? That doesn't make sense. Oh, it's because perhaps he thinks differently. Perhaps he acts differently, digests information differently, that sort of thing. So I think it could potentially neutralize some of the, unusual aspects of the evidence that the prosecution is going to bring forward. And that could land with some jurors, especially those folks who might know people or have people in their family with autism.
The fact is, though, it'd be a lot of coincidences. I mean, like a ridiculous amount of coincidences for the behavior that we've seen to think, oh, this guy's not a murderer. That's it's like you're doing all the things that add up to having been this guy.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Brueski and the Hidden Killers podcast. This is Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski.
Bryan Kohberger, the allegations against him make up one of the, I would say, creepiest cases that I think we have ever covered on here. Of course, the University of Idaho students. And the man accused is a Kohberger, criminology PhD student, accused of methodically stalking, murdering, and then allegedly trying to erase every trace of his involvement. It's a story with more behavioral breadcrumbs than a forensic psychology textbook. Joining us, psychotherapist and author Shavaun Scott. Shavaun, prosecution painting Kohberger as someone who studied how to commit the perfect crime, while the defense hints at neurological defects and autism, possibly. How do we begin to separate possible mental health conditions from dangerous criminal intent in a case like this?
Yeah, autism, if that's what they're going to go for with that, which it certainly sounds like that's going to be raised as an issue, has absolutely nothing to do with criminal behavior. There are millions and millions of people in the US and in every other country of the world that carry a diagnosis at this point of autistic spectrum disorder. That does not mean that they have dangerous fantasies. It does not mean they plot violence, and in no way does it mean that they don't have a moral compass or a conscience. So that is certainly not something that should factor into whether or not a person is guilty or innocent of something like this, because it simply doesn't result in that kind of behavior.
I want to talk about some of the behavior that occurred after the fact, after the crime was committed. And I think there's some nuggets here that are before that also kind of tie in when we try to examine the mind of Kohberger. Way back, right after the crimes were committed, before they had Kohberger in custody, before we knew the name Bryan Kohberger, there was Papa Rogers. Remember Papa Rogers online, the guy that would comment on the case on various Facebook groups and such, that seemed to have inside knowledge, knew about the knife sheath, knew about other elements that were not public knowledge as of that point. The profile picture looked a lot like Bryan Kohberger, if you're to do like an artistic rendition of him. And then when he was arrested, those messages stopped. It was interesting. It seemed like someone was taunting, and maybe it was him. We don't know the full answer to that question yet. And then also immediately after the crime, we have learned that he took that picture in the shower of him standing there, that selfie, wearing that tight buttoned up white shirt. And it's just a bizarre picture. You look at it and go, why? Is this a taunt? And is that all it is? I want to get your insights on this, considering the Papa Rogers part that existed that we are aware of, and the correlations with the picture. Because I found a few when I was on vacation the other week. I really wasn't that much on vacation because I was sitting there on my phone all day working on stuff. This is the shower picture. He's sitting there with a thumbs up. You can't see it because it's cropped. And next to it is images from the movie American Psycho.
Wow.
And, same button up. That's more of a, like a smock or something, but very similar look, all cleaned up. And obviously he's holding an axe. It was a knife that was used, but very similar type looks. So that's the movie American Psycho. You also have, of course, the movie Psycho, and we all know the main scene in that is a shower. Mm-hmm. And Norman Bates wasn't a character that was necessarily understood, and people were always thinking him as a bit awkward. We have Kohberger, who also felt very similar ways from his own writings. Mm-hmm. Two movies that seem to have a lot of correlation to that shower picture and also use the word psycho in their titles. Mm-hmm. And my conjecture on it would be, he feels that everyone thinks he's a psycho. He's probably been called that because of his weird ways of living or just the effects of having autism, and you just operate differently. But then outside the neurotypical, you may not understand it, and you get made fun of or picked on or what have you. He clearly did have a history of that happening as well. Mm-hmm. Is that shower picture a big F you to everybody going, you all think I'm psycho? I'm going to put this out there right in front of you with a big thumbs up after I murder people, referencing these damn movies that no one's ever going to think that no one's going to catch this. And I got away with it. I'm really wondering, because again, he's innocent until proven guilty, but how does this strike you?
It's absolutely fascinating. And, I had stayed away from the movie American Psycho back when it came out. I was younger and I just thought it would freak me out. I didn't watch it. You've got me curious now.
I haven't watched it in years. I don't even remember most of it. I'm going to watch it now.
I'm going to rewatch, just because that is really eerie. And looking at those images that you've got there, it's pretty spine chilling. So the picture of him with the thumbs up, I found incredibly creepy, because it definitely looks like he's proud of himself. He's accomplished something. And what an odd thing to take in the shower. It looks like his hair's still wet. Mm-hmm. And there's definitely meaning there. And, considering what we know about this whole situation now, it's a pretty dark meaning.
Yeah. My reaction is I made this. It's like, oh my God, Kohberger's shower picture is a taunting reference to American Psycho. And then I was like, oh, Psycho too? Same, yeah. Yeah. It's a big screw you. How often do we see, and you've written a great book on this, and the minds of what's the full title? I know.
Minds of Mass Killers, Understanding and Interrupting the Pathway to Violence.
Yes. You'll forgive me if I don't remember it all.
That's okay. It's a long one.
But yes, when we're talking about that, how often do we see mass killers basically emulate something because they don't feel, because they're missing that empathy, so they have to mimic something else or someone else? Sometimes it's a real killer. Sometimes, like, references with him have been to BTK. He studied under Catherine Ramsland, who wrote the book on BTK. How often do they find character or characters that they think they can relate to and almost idolize to an extent where then they're going to go out and give nods like this to them?
Yeah, my sense is that it's nearly always these guys, they're from early in life, they have been thinking about murder, they've been thinking about ways to kill people, ways to torture people, and usually this is reflected in their choice of entertainment, in the movies that they watch. Often they watch certain kinds of horror films over and over and over again. They begin to identify with the perpetrators, the killers. Most of us, when we watch scary movies, we identify with the victims, right?
Sure.
We're scared. We want the bad guy to get caught. They identify with the perpetrators. Mm-hmm. And whether it's the mass shooters who study each other online and try to out-top each other's kill scores, guys that become serial killers often become fascinated with other serial killers.
That's what makes me wonder about these images. Oh, by the way, also knives. too. I think acts actually in an American Psycho, but the knives in the movie Psycho wasn't a gun or anything used there. It's so bizarre, but it kind of makes sense at the same time that would be what could be going on here. Knowing this, they're just seeing this right now. What else would you be looking for if you were to be going through Kohberger's stuff to go, is there anything else here that can kind of tie him to this that maybe we didn't look at yet because maybe we didn't realize there was this nod to this type of a character? What other things should be examined?
Well, the big tell would be where he went on the internet. And I don't know what information they were able to glean about that, but that was the first thing that popped into my head when he was arrested was where does this guy hang out online? Because that's incredibly relevant. What kind of porn is he into? What kind of women is he interested in watching or looking at? I think all of that would have a lot of importance in a case like this.
I would now, seeing that, I'd be wondering about like Netflix history or any streaming platform history.
Yes.
What is he watching? What is he watching on a regular basis? Do people like this, let's say that I'm right and that there is some sort of connection here with this. Do people like this like obsessively rewatch these sort of things over and over typically? Or it's not just I watched it once and now I idolize this guy. It's more of a, I'm wondering if like things like this feed people like that because they don't have much feeling and then they get something out of the movie from the bad guy perspective.
Very much. They will have their favorite films, watch them over and over and over and over. And even with just an interesting one that we wouldn't have expected, about the film Bowling for Columbine, which was an anti-gun movie put out by Michael Moore. And a lot of kids that subsequently went on to become mass killers had been fascinated with that film as youngsters and grew up, and it was one of their favorite films, and they watched it over and over and over again, even though most of us would watch it and say, well, that was really an anti-violence movie.
Yeah.
But they liked the scenes of the killers in the movie and became fascinated with that and therefore watched it repeatedly.
Why? I mean, what is that makes a mind watch scenes like that and then sympathize or empathize or get joy from the I mean, is it like porn to them? Like, I guess or seeing a member of the sex you're attracted to, you know, in some sort of way? Is it that sort of a stimulation that they get out of it? Is it a sexual stimulation or is it something else that's just like that's strong, but there?
I think you nailed it. It's that sense of arousal, and whether or not it's actually sexual to them, I can't say. It may be in some cases, but it certainly is exciting and it makes them feel good. And that's that component of psychopathy that most of us, fortunately, do not have that. So we will watch horrible things in the media and have this revulsion or this sense of, oh, that's terrible, or that's so sad, something negative. But people that are psychopathic will watch it and go, isn't this cool? Isn't this exciting? So very different response.
The fact, I mean, obviously so many things are very digital now. So that's why I said, look at the history of what he's watching.
Yeah.
But what about physical objects? I would wonder with something like this, if this is something you are that passionate about, people will still collect physical things for things they're really into. So I'm wondering, was there a copy of American Psycho or Psycho in his house? Was there the book American Psycho in his house? Was there anything relating to these characters in his possession? Obviously, they've rated it. I'm really wondering what they went through. Would you be surprised if they found something with it? And what sort of things do people like that collect? I know there's trophies that people get or that they have after their killings. I'm wondering if that picture itself is the trophy. It is with a nod to everything that inspired. But what would you be looking for in like physical objects or things like that around his house as far as markings or anything like that? What have you seen?
I would be looking for any other types of weaponry. A lot of times people will have photographs or save articles or stories about different kinds of knives or guns or different kinds of weapons. Even historical books about different kinds of war crimes or criminals or Nazis or, strange things that would just be out of place in most of our bookshelves or our homes.
Let's move away from the picture for a moment, but let's talk about some of the things that he was doing with his studies. Obviously, we've seen some of the questions that he had for the DeSales research that he was doing. Very specific questions about emotions, very specific about how did you feel when you committed the crime. What was weird to me about it was the questions seemed over the top, as if he were asking them as someone who committed murder, not necessarily someone who was like shoplifting or something of that nature. I don't have the list in front of me right now, but they were very much along those lines. But if you're studying criminology, it could make sense that you're going to be researching all that in the context of who we think he might be or is alleged to be. It makes more sense. And there's also now the essay that was out there. We've seen some excerpts from it, basically an essay on how to process a stabbing crime scene. Is it just part of the studies, or do folks like this really go to this level of obsession and researching what they want to do, especially if it's their first time doing it?
Yeah, that's the thing that's so interesting in hindsight is looking back at his academic life and being able to speculate about how much of this was really meeting his fantasy needs at the time and how much he was actually studying how to be a better criminal and get away with these things. Really feeling, as it looked like in that photograph, that he was quite proud of himself when he thought he had gotten away with it.
Yeah, very much so. Some are looking at it as a smoking gun. I don't know if it is or not. A jury will ultimately decide that. But we have the knife sheath, the knife, the sharpener, all bought by him on Amazon, at least the same model. But it was done about 6 months before the murders actually took place. There's also the ski mask that one of the witnesses, the surviving roommates, says that they saw him in with the bushy eyebrows. Shows he bought one of those too. Happens to look like the same one she described as seeing way back. The fact that they were purchased so far in advance, we're talking like 6 months to a year on some of these things. What does that say about this? I guess sometimes when you think of a case or stories like this, they buy those things right before. At least we think they buy them right before. Is that incorrect? Do people start really planning this out and getting their supplies that far out?
It's certainly likely that he would have bought it quite a bit before he was actually ready to use it, assuming that he was planning, plotting, rehearsing. And it's a scary thought, but what just occurred to me as you mentioned that is we don't know how many times he was driving around with these things in his car, perhaps looking at other people in other places, and he just never got the exact right opportunity.
Would that mean though that this was somewhat random, and he was just going to run into any house that had people in just to kill? Or do you think we're going to find a lot more premeditation? Because we do have more data now that shows just how often he was circling that house. And it's a lot, even that night. And we're finding more camera information out too of where he was seen, or the vehicle, at least, what appears to be the vehicle that was seen. So are you saying that there's someone like this would likely have the tools with them when they're stalking, even if they're not going to go commit the crime at that moment? Part of having like the getup is an important part to them?
Certainly could be. And when his defense liked to make the point that he just was this harmless guy who liked to go out at night and drive around. Well, that sounds like stalking behavior to me. It's what a predator does. They go out. A lot of them are voyeuristic, so they're watching, they're looking for windows they can peep in. They're looking for women they can see out, maybe walking home from a bar and follow them home. And they do look for just the right opportunity, but they may pick a certain person and then watch them over the course of time before they actually, plot the attack. But Could he have been doing that for months? Yeah, I don't think I would be trying to make the case, well, he's just such a nice guy out driving around at night all the time.
Well, and the looking at the stars went up in flames when they realized,
Right.
oh, it was extremely foggy that night. Like low fog, low clouds, like there was no stars. There's nothing there. I'm sure it'll be argued as conjecture of, well, he likes to. Maybe he's hoping to get out of the fog and find something. He was also allegedly seen in Clarkson, Washington on video at stores hours after the murders. Some of the assumptions there is that maybe he was trying to get rid of some of the murder weaponry, or I'm wondering if it was more a victory lap in public with the tight white shirt on that we're seeing in the photo, just going out and about, maybe also disposing things. But I'm also wondering, is there a thrill that someone like that would get from going out looking all neat and white and clean after just committing such a horrible crime? People are freaking out and you're out there in the crowds. I mean, Costco, Albertsons, those are fairly busy places. And if he's seen there wandering around right after the murders, the morning of, getting all dressed up in the shower, is that something? Is that something of a thrill that they're just taking up every single moment that they can get and just soaking it all in?
Yeah, look what I can do, look what I can get away with, and nobody knows. I've got this big secret and I fooled everybody.
Do you think something like this could be brought up in trial? Obviously, it's a lot of assumptions here. They'd have to probably find something within the house, or if there is a pattern of watching these movies or something, then I could imagine these sort of things being brought in. Without it, do you think something like that could be brought in, or what would be the vehicle to bring in some of these things, if at all?
Yeah, I think it would probably be pretty hard to have something that you could present as evidence without the person coming out and owning it and being willing to discuss it.
It's going to be very fascinating because this thing, it gets deeper and it gets darker every single day. Just one of the darkest ones I think we've seen, and hopefully, well, there'll be more. I was going to say hopefully there won't be more, but there'll be more.
Unfortunately, our worst nightmares.
Exactly.
Yes.
Craving non-stop true crime updates? Press subscribe now and get the latest cases, analysis, and expert commentary delivered straight to your feed. Only from the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today.
Oops.